percentages converting from fractions and decimals with number chips. This is the Thanksgiving version. So it starts out with just an explanation of what a percentage is. It's a comparison out of 100. So they can see with these decimals, 56 hundredths, if we write it as a fraction, 56 100ths, comparison out of 100 makes it 56%, and so on. One whole would be 100 out of 100, or 100%. So students are going to start on slide 3. They're going to be moving these colorful number chips into the correct place. So every slide has all of the number chips they need. So if they get to the end and something doesn't work, they know they've made an error and they need to go back and check. So the first one's pretty simple. So they're just changing from decimals to percentages. 12 hundredths, 12%, 59 hundredths, 59%. And to move these, they just click on the edge, click and hold, and then they can move it into place. When they get to the end, one whole would be 100%. So this slide is more of a practice slide. It's pretty simple. Slide 4 shows them another way to convert from a decimal to a percentage is to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So if they do that, they get 62% here. They get 174%. And when they get to this last one, if they move that decimal point 2 places to the right, well, there's no number here, so they have to add a 0. So that's 30%, not 3%. So the next slide might be a little bit of a challenge. So if they move the decimal point 2 places to the right, then of course this one is 65%. This one will be 6.5%, or 6 5/10%. This one, they have to add a 0 if they move the decimal point 2 places to the right, 70%, and this one, 7%, and so on. Now, changing fractions to percentages, they need to change the fractions to an equivalent fraction with 100 in the denominator. So here's the first method. So to get 100 in the denominator, they can multiply the numerator and denominator by 5. That gives them an equivalent fraction of 45 hundredths. Well, then we already know that's 45 hundredths as a decimal, which is 45%. So the next slide, they're going to be doing that themselves. They want to convert their denominator to 100. So they can see on the first one, they have to multiply by 5. That means the numerator, they multiply by 5 also, and that gives them 30 hundredths, which would be 30 hundredths as a decimal, which would be 30%. And so on. So they've got a little bit more practice to do. They're going to do the same thing on the next 2 slides, change their denominator to 100. Now, sometimes they can't change that denominator directly to 100. They might need to simplify first. So here's an example. They can't multiply anything times 40 to get 100. So if they simplify their fraction first, they may be able to do it. So here, if they divide numerator and denominator by 2, they get 9/20. Now they can change it to an equivalent fraction with 100 in the denominator by multiplying by 5. That gives them 45 hundredths, which is 45%. So the next few slides are going to be practicing simplifying first. So here, if they divide the numerator and denominator by 3, they get 2/5. And now from 2/5, they can multiply, getting an equivalent fraction with 100 in the denominator by multiplying by 20, and so on. So simplifying first. They're going to do that on the next slide also. Now, sometimes they can't convert their fractions to decimals, to a decimal with 100 in the denominator. They can't simplify it, they can't convert it, so the only thing left to do would be to divide. So fractions are division. So this is 5 divided by 8, and they can see that they get 625 thousandths when they divide, move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and that gives them 62.5%. So the next slide, most of the problem's done for them on this one. 8 goes into 10 one time, so they're going to move the 1. 8 times 1 is 8. Subtract, you get 2. Bring down the 0. 8 goes into 20 two times. Get 16. Subtract, bring down the 0. And they end up with 125 thousandths. Now they have to move their decimal point 2 places to the right. So here you want to have them move the decimal point into the correct place, and then they will get 12.5%. Now the last slide, they're going to do the entire problem on their own. So it's a little bit more of a challenge. They have number chips for every single number when they divide. And again, at the end, they need to move that decimal point into the correct place. So that is percentages changing from fractions and decimals, the Thanksgiving version.